And if you notice, Emmanuel Macron went there right after the blast. And the reason he went there so quickly was not just because of the blast, but because the French influence had been waning in Lebanon for the past at least 10 years. French isn't being taught in schools anymore. English is actually being taught more than French in schools anymore. The French influence rather has been waning in that country because it was a it was under the French colonial rule until the French left back in the 1940s. And so Macron went there because French influence has been waning in that country. But if you notice, if you watched any of the clips when Emmanuel Macron was there, people were actually begging the French to come back and rule Lebanon again. Now, Macron said it's not going to happen, but they are going to help, and they're very concerned. And as I said, there's going to be a transition. As the Bible prophecies say, that Lebanon is going to go into a civil war, and a tyrannical government's going to take it over, and it's going to be in an alliance with the beast power called one of the Miry Clay nations. Now, the beast power hasn't formed yet, so I'm not surprised that Emmanuel Macron said no, but the mindset is there. The idea is there among the Lebanese, begging the French to come back and rule over Lebanon again. So it's there. So when everything changes and Lebanon goes into civil war and the EU is gone, and we see the beast power rise, we will see an alliance with Lebanon as well as with Egypt and the Palestinians and the North African nations, the Black African nations, the Miry Clay nations. And we see that Europe is attempting to recolonize Africa again under a type of Marshall Plan to help out Africa. So that's in the works. And I've read you articles talking about Europe recolonizing Africa, especially Germany. So it's there. The mindset is there. And the Lebanese are begging the French to come back and rule over them again, because back during in the early 20th century, they had the French mandate and they ruled over Lebanon and Syria, and then of course pulled out, and they're begging the French to come back once again. And now the government is collapsing. As I said, Lebanon right now is being prepared for the coming back of the Israelites. That will happen, of course, at the second coming of Jesus Christ. Now, at the time of the final battle, let me just read to you from Joel, the 3rd chapter, once again. The time of the final battle in Jerusalem, where it says in Joel 3 that I will gather all nations, verse 2, and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat. Now, in Revelation, the 16th chapter, verse 16, we see the gathering of the armies at Armageddon. Armageddon is not a battle. Armageddon is a gathering place. They gather in Armageddon, then come down to Jerusalem, the valley of Jehoshaphat, and there the final battle will take place, where it says that Jesus Christ of Nazareth is going to come down with his army and destroy the beast. So he will gather all nations, the valley of Jehoshaphat, and plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations, and parted my land. This is what the beast power is going to do to European Israel and the Jews. And it says, and they have cast lots for my people. Human trafficking, slave trade is happening now. And it's going to happen to the Israelites, the United States, the British Commonwealth of Nations, and the peoples of Northwestern Europe. They have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for an harlot, and sold a girl for wine, that they may drink. Now notice verse 4. It says, yea, and what have ye to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon? That's Lebanon. They claim that they are God's people, but they are Muslim. The Muslims are going to take over Lebanon. It's going to be a tyrannical government. It's going to be in league with the beast. Just like back in World War II, Hitler was in league with the Muslim nations. They had a lot in common. Of course, the one thing they had in common was hatred for the Jews. And here we see it again. Notice, they have cast lots for my people. It says, yea, what I have to do with thee, O Tyre and Zidon? They claim to be God's people, but they are not. And all the coasts of Palestine. They also claim to be God's people, but they are not. They are not Christian. They are not Israelite. They are Muslim, and they claim to be God's people through Ishmael, which is a complete myth. And God says, what do you have to do with me? You got nothing to do with me, God says. Then it says, will you render me a recompense? If ye recompense me swiftly and speedily, will I return your recompense upon your own head. How do you get to God? Well, through his people. And God says, yeah, you're going to render me a recompense? Well, I'm going to recompense your ways upon your own head, as God says in Ezekiel, the 7th chapter, verse 8 and 9. He goes, I will judge you according to your ways and your abominations. They sold the Israelites into slavery. Now God says the same thing is going to happen to you. Notice verse 5. Because ye have taken my silver and my gold and have carried into your temples. And obviously the temple is going to stand again in Jerusalem, and it's going to be torn down. And you can read this in Obadiah, the 16th verse, where they drink upon the mountain of God, and the temple is going to be torn down, that third temple that's going to be built, and they gather in all the gold and silver into their temples, kind of like what happened just recently in Turkey at the Hagia Sophia church, where they now just declared it a mosque. So we're seeing it today, and it's going to happen in the future. They put it in their temples, my goodly and pleasant things. Notice verse 6. The children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold unto the Grecians. That's Europe. So here we see human trafficking, slave trade with Europe and Lebanon and Palestine. Obviously, they are in an alliance together. They are the Miry Clay nations that mix itself with the iron. And you can read that in Daniel, the 2nd chapter. The iron mixed with miry clay, the Miry Clay nations, Europe and the Miry Clay nations. And here we see the Lebanese begging the French to come back and rule over them again. We're going to see this European colonization, this alliance with the Miry Clay nations once again, ladies and gentlemen. But this time it's going to be the beast. It's not going to be the EU. Macron said no, and I'm not surprised, because it's not going to be the EU. The EU is going to dissolve, NATO is going to dissolve, and we are going to see a new Holy Roman Empire church-state government form. A 10-nation combine, possibly called the United States of Europe. And it's going to be ruled by a dictator called the Assyrian in Bible prophecy. And the 10 nations are going to give their power and strength to the beast, the Assyrian. And he is going to be a military dictator. And it says that they have sold the children of Judah and Jerusalem. You have sold unto the Grecians. That's the beast power, that ye might remove them far from their border. The Israelites are going to be in slavery and captivity, scattered all over the world, as it says in verse 2. You have scattered my people among the nations and parted my land. And then God says in verse 7, behold, I will raise them out of the place whither you have sold them, and I will return your recompense upon your own head. I will sell your sons and your daughters into the hand of the children of Judah, and they shall sell them to the Sabians and people afar off, for the Eternal has spoken it. So what's going to happen to the Israelites? It's going to happen to the Lebanese, and they are not going to return to their land. Lebanon is going to go to the Israelites, specifically the tribe of Asher. Read the book of Joshua, and you will see that that land of Lebanon was allotted to the tribe of Asher. So the Lebanese are not going to return to their land. So here we see an alliance, the beast with Lebanon. And we see the Lebanese begging the French to come back. And France is going to be one of those 10 nations of the beast power. They're begging the French to come back and rule Lebanon once again. We are seeing prophecy beginning to develop. The EU and NATO still have to fall, but we're seeing the Miry Clay starting to ask the Europeans to please come and recolonize and rule over us again. We are seeing a Marshall Plan being developed by Germany into Africa to recolonize Africa once again. We are seeing the beginning stages of the development of the iron mixed with Miry Clay, and we're also seeing the death and the destruction, the dissolving of the EU and NATO, which is the potter's clay. And I believe after these elections in November 2020, we are going to see these things really accelerate. I believe personally that Donald Trump is going to be the last president of the United States of America. And there'll be the end of NATO, the end of the EU, the rise of the beast power, and the alliance with the Black African nations and the North African nations and Lebanon and Palestine. And that will be the final beast that's going to arise. That's going to fight Christ at his coming. We are living in amazing times, ladies and gentlemen. The Lebanese government, most of them have resigned. People are upset. People are mad. They are sick of corrupt government. They are sick of the terrorism that's going on with Hezbollah. They are sick of the Saudi Arabians and their influence in Lebanon. Civil war is going to happen in Lebanon. I think the IMF is going to start getting involved because they're just out of money. The economy is in the tank with COVID-19 on top of that. It is just an absolute mess right now, as prophesied in the pages of your Bible.